loops. Once you start getting familiar with the basics of shell scripting, you'll most certainly have a need to loop over a list of items such as a list of directories or a file to retrieve a list of values. Consider this. Let's say that you've got a list of 10 host names in a text file and you want to see if each of these computers is responding, so you decide to ping each one. Now, pinging 10 computers is not terribly difficult, but it's just boring. But what if that number was increased to 100 computers or 1,000? Or what about 10,000? Well, now it's clear you need a better way of doing this, unless of course you're trying to act busy. Now if that's the case, do it manually. Otherwise, some sort of script is needed. Well, that's why we're here. And that's where the for command comes into play. The for command is a very powerful shell scripting command because it's so flexible. Now, using the example I mentioned a moment ago, let's say that we've got a list of computers in a text file. Now, I only have this single computer here, but that's okay. We can get it to ping itself a few different ways. Okay, so what we're going to do is use the for command to open a file which is called host.txt, located on the root of my C drive. So what we'll do is we'll go and open up Notepad. I'm just going to paste in a bit of a script here. Okay, so what we're going to do is use our for command to open a file which is called host.txt, located on the root of my C drive. Now we're also going to add in this /f switch, as this tells our for command that there's a file that we want to loop through. If it was a directory, we'd add a -d switch. Now next, we'll use the iterator value of %i, which is typically the first iterator used in shell scripting. Now remember, when you assign an iterator here, you need to be aware of a gotcha. You will need to use a %, or it will fail, but only if you're running this from a script. If you're running it from a command prompt directly, then use only 1% character. You got that? Good. Okay, now once we have the command looping through each line in our text file, we'll need to do something with each line. Okay, so what will we do? Well, we will do, which is just the same thing as saying, hey, now run this command. We'll do a ping -n, which just tells the ping command to issue a single ping to a host, and we'll pass in the value that we got from the host text file. In other words, whatever now is stored in our %i. Alright, well let's give it a go. We'll save our script and I'll just give it a name of for.bat and click enter, and we'll go and open up a command prompt and I'll type in for.bat and hit enter. Okay, and if we scroll up here, it worked. You can see we pinged our server01.testdomain.com, which was our local host. We pinged 127.0.0.1, and that of course succeeded. And then we actually pinged server01 by name. Okay, so we've successfully pinged 3 different computers. Now we can also do this from a list within our script if we prefer. We'll go back to our script here. And what we'll do is we'll come up here and we'll simply change the value for our text file and we'll add in the host name. So I'll just type in localhost followed by a space and then add in 127.0.0.1, and then I'll also add in server01, which of course is the name of this server. Now what we can also do is remove our /f switch here from our command, since we aren't actually looping through a file or directory, just a list which we've hard coded here inside these brackets. Now remember, whatever is inside these brackets is what you are expecting the for command to loop through. And whilst for runs through this list, it'll temporarily assign the value it grabs to the %i variable. So again, the first time this script runs, it'll take the first item, localhost, from this list and assign it to %1. It'll ping it once, and then it will move on to the next item in the list, which of course is 127.0.0.1. It'll assign that to %1, do a ping, and then move on to our third one, which is server01, and do exactly the same thing. Alright, so I'm going to save my script and I'm going to give it a whirl. Okay, and we can see that it works. Nice. Now see how easy and useful this is? Well, let's take a look at another switch that we can use with our for command, the token switch. But before we start this, let's just open up another copy of Notepad here, and we'll just enter in, this is some text, and I'm just going to save this on my, let's save it on my C drive as a file called token.txt. Okay, And now I'm just going to close this. I'm going to go back to Notepad. Now let's consider for a moment this script. Now we've seen some of this before. We have a for statement over here with a /f switch, which of course we'll use to tell for that we want it to loop through a file, which is going to be our token.txt file. Alright, now next we have these tokens here, tokens 1, 2 and 3. So what's a token? Well, a token is simply a piece or a section of what for has just searched through. In other words, each word that appears in our token.txt file becomes a token. So the first word we had in our tokens.txt file was this. So token 1 will become the word this. The second word we had in our text file was is. So our second token is the word is. And of course, our third word in the file is some. So our third token is now the word some. So how does our script know that each word should be a token? Well, that's easy. Every time the script encounters a space or a tab, there's our next token. So our first token is obviously the word this, but then there's a space. So our script knows that token 2 begins here and that it ends where the next space is. So token 2 becomes the word is. You got that? Okay, so what we're asking our script is, go and grab each word in the tokens.txt file here, separate them into tokens where each space or tab occurs, and then echo out the value to the screen. But on our first line, we'll only want to echo out the value of token 1. On our second line, we'll want to see token 2, and on our third line, we'll want to see token 3. And of course, on the final line here, we just want to see the default token, which just happens to be the first one. So we should expect to see the words, this is some this. Okay, well let's run it and see what we get. Okay, it works, and this is exactly what we were expecting. Now this is all well and good, but what happens if the words in our file were not separated by a space or a tab? Well, then we use the delims option. Delims allows us to do the same thing as tokens, but we can specify the actual delimiter rather than it being defaulted to a space or a tab. So if we go back and open up our tokens.txt file, which is on my C drive here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the spaces and I'm going to change them and put them with a comma instead. Okay, well I'll save this and I'll close the file down. Okay, we'll go back to our notepad and we'll fix this problem. Alright, so after our tokens here, we'll add in delims equals comma. Now I'm just going to go and copy this here and I'm going to paste it onto my other lines here. Alright, we're done. So I'm just going to save this and we'll go back and we'll rerun our script. So what we get now is our first token, which is this, our second is the word is, our third is some, and our fourth token, which is the default one, is the entire line. This is some text, obviously all separated via commas. So hopefully you're understanding now how this is starting to work. Now so far we've looked at picking out and echoing back individual tokens 1, 2 and 3, but you can also echo back all tokens appearing on the line using the asterisk. So let's go back here, and what we can do is we can simply change our number 1 here to an asterisk, and we'll get everything come back on the one line. Now don't worry here about the delims option, as the token will pick up everything and ignore the request here to separate via commas when we use the asterisk. So if we save this and go back to our command prompt, I'm just going to clear the screen here and we'll run it again. We can see now that our first token came back as the entire string. Alright, well what we'll do now is we'll go back to our notepad again, but this time we'll request more than one token on a single line as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back and I'm going to delete my asterisk and I'm going to put my 1, 2 in here as well. And at the end of our line, after our $i, I'm going to add a $j. And we'll save this and we'll go back to our command prompt and we'll run it again. And this time you can see here that our first line came back with the words this is. Okay, now in case you're wondering, back here at our script, we use this $j because now we have two objects that we're requesting these values back from. Now on this line, the $i is taken up from our first token, which of course is the word this. So when we request the second token, it can't go into $i as that's already taken up by the word this. so it gets moved to the next available, which is $%J, which is why we add the reference to $%J at the end of the line, or we'd have a problem. So just to prove this, if I go and delete the J and add an I here and go back and rerun our script, you'll notice that we get the word this. So be aware that when you return two tokens on the same line, just ensure that you echo back the correct variable of %I, %J, %K, %L, and so on. Now remember, they don't actually have to be in any particular order either. No siree. We can happily change J to I, and we'll go and change I to J, and we'll save this and we'll go and run it again, and you can see this is returned on our first line. Alright, well let's go and move on to a final example, but this time we'll use some numbers instead of words. So I'm going to go back to my token.txt file here. Okay, so we'll change our text here to some numbers, and I'll just say 10, 20, 30, 40. How original is that? Alright, we'll close this down. And we'll go back to our script and we'll run this, and you can see now that we get 10, 20, 30, and of course 10, 20, 30, 40 all written on the one line. So why don't we go back to our script and we'll change our top line to ask for all of our tokens from 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now we have seen this before. What we're asking for is each number in the token.txt file, which is separated by commas, and each is going to be assigned to a variable, so we'll need to be adding in %J, %K, and %L. So we'll save this and go back here and rerun our script. Okay, now as you may have expected, on our top line we get returned 10, 20, 30, 40 without the commas, which of course we used as a delimiter. And then we have, of course, token 2, which is 20, token 3, which is 30, and then of course our entire line, which is the default token. Now, but did you know you can also add these numbers together as well? Well, you do now, so let's go and do it. Back on our script, on our first line, we'll still ask for tokens 1, 2, 3, and 4, but this time we'll need to invoke the set command to produce some mathematics. Now, after our do statement, we'll add set/a. Now we add the /a, which tells the set command that whatever on the right hand side of our equal sign, we're going to need to perform some arithmetic on. Okay, so now we need to assign this to a variable, which I'm just going to call total, then our equal sign, and I'll just remove our echo statement here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add %I plus %J plus %K plus %L, and then we're going to echo out, and we'll do this on a new line, our variable %total %. Okay, now I'm just going to go and delete these lines here as we don't really need them, so I'll save this. We'll go back to our command prompt, clear the screen, and we'll run our script. Okay, well there you go, our first line now resolves to 100, which of course is what you get if you added up 10, 20, 30 and 40 altogether. Alright, in this video we've discussed looping through a list of items and using that list to perform another command on. We looked at using tokens to loop through lists that contain spaces or tabs, and using delim for other special characters such as commas or slashes that might appear in your list. And we finished with a brief look at using arithmetics in our scripts using our set/a switch. Now in our next video we'll talk more about arithmetics where we discuss operators. We'll see you there.